Hey there, story lovers. Wow, I'm so excited to share this crazy tale with you. Before we get started, can you do me a quick favor? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. Are you in a big city, a small town, maybe chilling at home with some snacks? Oh, and if you love wild stories about neighbors who act like they own the whole world, hit that subscribe button right now. That way you won't miss any of the juicy stuff coming up. Okay, here's a question to get you thinking. Have you ever had a neighbor who was super nosy, always peeking over your fence or telling you what to do? Maybe they complained about your dog barking or your bike in the driveway. Well, hold on tight because this story is about to blow your mind. It was a bright, sunny afternoon in a little place called Willow Creek. This wasn't a huge city with tall buildings or noisy cars. Nope, it was a cozy neighborhood, the kind where kids ride bikes down the street and old folks wave from their porches. The houses sat in neat rows with green lawns and colorful flowers. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. If Mrs. Thompson baked cookies, she'd share them with the whole block. If Mr. Lee's dog ran off, the neighbors would help look for it. It felt like a big family, or at least, that's what most people thought. But every family has someone who stirs up trouble, right? In Willow Creek, that someone was a lady named Karen Walsh. Now, Karen wasn't just any neighbor. Oh no, she was the president of the HOA, which stands for Homeowners Association. That's a fancy name for a group that makes rules about how your house and yard should look. Karen loved rule. She loved them so much she carried a clipboard everywhere, writing down anything she didn't like. Grass too tall, she'd write it down. Mailbox a little crooked, she'd write that down too. And if she saw a kid's toy left in a yard, you'd better believe she'd march right over and knock on the door to complain. Karen had short hair that was always perfect, and she wore bright red lipstick that made her look like she was ready to argue with anyone. Her shoes clicked on the sidewalk like a warning bell, and her voice was loud enough to scare birds out of trees. Most people in Willow Creek just nodded when she talked, even if they didn't agree. They didn't want to deal with her yelling or getting one of her angry letters in the mail. Karen thought she was the queen of the neighborhood, and she wasn't afraid to let everyone know it. Now let's talk about Jake Miller. Jake was the new guy in Willow Creek. He just moved into a small house at the end of Maple Street with a little front yard and a white fence. Jake wasn't loud or flashy. He was a regular guy, maybe in his 30s, with messy brown hair and a friendly smile. He liked to wear jeans and sneakers, and he always waved at kids riding by on their scooters. Jake wasn't trying to cause any trouble. He just wanted to settle into his new home and live a quiet life. One thing about Jake, he loved gadgets. Not big fancy stuff like robots or spaceships, but cool little things that made life easier. His favorite was a shiny electric lock he'd put on his front gate. This wasn't an ordinary lock with a key. Oh no, this one was special. It had a little screen and buttons, and you could open it with your phone or a code. It even made a soft beep beep sound when it worked. Jake thought it was awesome. He'd spent hours setting it up, making sure it was perfect. To him, that lock was like a tiny piece of the future, right there on his gate. On this sunny afternoon, Jake was out front tinkering with his lock. The sky was blue with fluffy white clouds floating by. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, and somewhere nearby a bird was chirping. Jake hummed to himself, twisting a tiny screwdriver to adjust the lock's wires. He was happy, lost in his work, not thinking about anything else. The lock blinked green and Jake grinned. "Looking good," he said to himself, wiping a bit of sweat off his forehead. But what Jake didn't know was that someone was watching him, not just watching, staring. Across the street, hidden behind a bush, was Karen Walsh. Her eyes were sharp like a cat watching a mouse. She clutched her clipboard so tight her knuckles turned white. To Karen, Jake's electric lock wasn't just a gadget. It was a problem, a big one. She didn't understand how it worked, and that made her mad. In her mind, fancy locks like that didn't belong in Willow Creek. They were too new, too strange. And Jake, well, he was new and strange too. Karen didn't like new people. She liked things to stay the same her way. When Jake moved in, she'd already decided he was trouble. He didn't come to her HOA meeting. He didn't sign up for her neighborhood watch program. And now here he was, putting up a weird lock that looked like it belonged in a spy movie. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "Not on my watch," she muttered under her breath. She scribbled something on her clipboard, her pen scratching like an angry wasp. Jake, still messing with his lock, had no clue Karen was there. He didn't hear her shoes tapping as she stepped out from behind the bush. He didn't see her march across the street, her face redder than her lipstick. All he knew was his lock was working great and the day felt perfect. But perfect days don't last forever, do they? Not when someone like Karen is around, ready to turn a sunny afternoon into a storm. What Jake also didn't know, what nobody in Willow Creek knew, was that Karen wasn't just a bossy neighbor with too many rules. She was hiding something big, not just a little secret like forgetting to water her plants. No, this was the kind of secret that could change everything. The kind that makes your jaw drop and your eyes go wide. And Jake's electric lock, it was about to accidentally shine a light on that secret, even though he didn't mean to. Imagine this for a second, a regular guy just trying to enjoy his new home and a neighbor who thinks she's in charge of everything. Sounds like a recipe for trouble, right? But it's more than that. It's like a puzzle with pieces you don't even see until they snap together. Jake thought he was just fixing his lock. Karen thought she was protecting her perfect neighborhood, but neither of them knew what was coming. Neither of them knew that this sunny day was the start of something wild. Something that would make the whole neighborhood talk for years. So picture Jake standing there, his tools spread out on the grass. His lock blinks and he smiles, thinking everything's fine. Across the street, Karen's watching, her clipboard ready, her mind racing with plans to stop him. The air feels warm, the birds keep singing, but there's a tiny spark of something else. A little hint of trouble, like a cloud you can't quite see yet. What's Karen going to do? Why does she care so much about a lock? And what's she hiding that's got her so nervous? That's where our story begins, right at the edge of something big. Jake, about to learn that moving to Willow Creek isn't as simple as unpacking boxes. And Karen, she's about to find out that picking a fight with the new guy might be the worst mistake she's ever made. Want to know what happens next? I bet you do. Stick with me because this tale is just getting started and it's going to take you places you never expected. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. What would you do if someone complained about something as small as a lock on your gate? Would you laugh it off, or would you wonder what they're really up to? Let me know in the comments because I'm dying to hear your thoughts. Alright, let's keep going. This story, about to get even crazier. Karen Walsh was not an ordinary neighbor. No way. She was the kind of person who acted like she owned every house on the block. If your grass grew just a tiny bit too tall, like half an inch, she'd grab a ruler, measure it, and then bang on your door to complain. If your mailbox had a smudge, she'd write you a letter about it. And if she saw a kid's bike left in a driveway, oh boy, she'd march right over and tell you to move it right now. Karen loved rules. She loved them more than ice cream, more than sunny days, maybe even more than her fancy red car. And in Willow Creek, she was the boss of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. That meant she got to make rules and tell everyone what to do. To Karen, Jake Miller's electric lock was like a giant red flag waving in her face. It wasn't a normal lock, the kind you open with a boring old key. Nope, this one was shiny and high-tech, with buttons and a little screen that lit up. Karen didn't understand it, and that made her mad, really mad. She didn't trust things she didn't understand, and she definitely didn't trust Jake. He was new, he was quiet, and he didn't bow down to her like some other neighbors did. To Karen, that lock screamed trouble, and she was sure Jake was up to no good. That sunny afternoon, after spying on Jake from across the street, Karen couldn't hold it in anymore. She grabbed her clipboard, the one she always carried like a superhero shield, and stormed toward Jake's house. Her high-heeled shoes went click, click, click on the sidewalk, loud and fast, like a clock ticking down to a big explosion. Her face was red, her lips pressed tight, and her eyes were sharp as knives. She stopped right in front of Jake's gate, where he was still working on his lock, and pointed at it like it was a monster. "That lock is against the rules," she snapped, her voice so loud it made a nearby squirrel scamper up a tree. "It's ugly, it's weird, and it doesn't belong here. Take it down right now or I'm calling the cops." Jake looked up from his work, a little surprised. He was kneeling by the gate, holding a tiny screwdriver with a rag in his other hand to wipe off dirt. His jeans were dusty and his hair was a bit messy from the breeze. He didn't look like someone causing trouble, just a guy fixing his favorite gadget. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on the rag, and gave Karen a calm look. "It's just a lock, Karen," he said, his voice nice and steady. "It keeps my place safe, that's all." But Karen wasn't listening, not even a little bit. Her eyes got smaller, like she was trying to shoot lasers at him. She crossed her arms, her clipboard tucked tight against her chest. "Safe," she said, laughing in a mean way. "You think I believe that? Nobody needs a lock like that unless they're hiding something." She took a step closer, her heels clicking again. "I'm warning you, Jake, take it down or you'll be sorry." Jake tilted his head, still calm, but inside he felt a tiny sting. Why was she so angry? It was just a lock, not a bomb or a secret spy gadget. He tried to explain again. Karen, it's no big deal. It's like a regular lock, just fancier. Nobody else cares about it. He even smiled a little, hoping she'd chill out. But Karen didn't chill out. Oh no, she got madder. Her face turned redder than a tomato and she yanked her phone out of her pocket. You think you're so smart, don't you? She hissed. Well, I'm done talking. I'm calling the police right now. Her fingers started tapping the screen like she was already dialing 911. Jake watched her, his smile fading. He didn't say anything else, just shrugged his shoulders like it was no big deal. But deep down, that sting in his chest grew a little sharper. Why was she acting like he'd done something awful? Why was a lock making her flip out like this? And then he noticed something weird. When Karen said police, her voice shook just a tiny bit. Not a lot, but enough to make Jake wonder. Her hands were shaky too, like she was nervous about something. That didn't make sense. If she was so sure she was right, why did she seem scared? Karen kept talking, her voice loud again. You'll regret this, Jake Miller, she said, pointing at him one last time before turning to march back across the street. Her heels clicked even faster now, and she held her phone to her ear, muttering something Jake couldn't hear. He stood there watching her go, the rag still in his hand. The sun was still shining, the birds were still chirping, but the air felt different now. Like a storm was coming, even though the sky was clear. Jake shook his head and went back to his lock. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted to live in his new house, maybe make a few friends and enjoy his cool gadgets. But Karen wasn't making that easy. As he twisted his screwdriver, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Why was she so upset about a lock? Was it really about the rules, or was something else going on? That shaky voice stuck in his mind like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Across the street, Karen stood on her porch, still holding her phone. She wasn't talking to anyone now, she'd hung up, but Jake didn't know that. She glanced back at his gate, her eyes narrow and her lips tight. To her, Jake wasn't just a new guy with a weird lock. He was a threat, not because of anything he'd done, but because he didn't follow her orders. Karen liked control. She liked knowing everyone did what she said, and Jake, he wasn't playing her game. But there was something else bothering Karen, something she didn't tell anyone. Every time she looked at Jake's lock, her stomach twisted. Not just because it was new or fancy, but because it made her think about secrets. Her secrets, things she kept hidden, things nobody in Willow Creek could ever find out. She didn't know why, but that lock felt like a spotlight shining too close to the truth, and that scared her more than anything. Jake didn't know any of this yet. He didn't know why Karen was acting like a volcano about to erupt. He didn't know she was watching him even now, planning her next move. All he knew was that his quiet day had turned into something else, something tense, something strange. He tightened a screw on his lock and sighed. Just a lock, he muttered to himself. But even as he said it, a tiny voice in his head whispered, maybe it's not just about the lock. The next few days in Willow Creek weren't so sunny anymore, at least not for Jake Miller. Karen Walsh, the HOA boss, was on a mission to make his life tough. She wasn't just mad about his electric lock anymore. She was acting like Jake was the biggest problem in the whole neighborhood. And boy, did she know how to stir up trouble. Karen didn't just stop at yelling at him that one afternoon. Oh no, she turned up the heat big time, like she was trying to cook Jake in a pot of her rules. First, she started sending Jake letters. Not friendly notes like the kind you get from a pen pal. These were official HOA letters written on fancy paper with big scary words like violation and fines. They showed up in Jake's mailbox almost every day. One said his lock was not allowed and he had to take it down or pay $50. Another said his gate was too modern and he owed $25 for that. Jake read them, scratching his head. Too modern, he muttered. It's just a lock. He didn't know why Karen was so upset, but he didn't rip the lock off. He just tucked the letters in a drawer and kept going about his day. But Karen wasn't done. She went further. She stuck bright yellow notices right on Jake's mailbox where everyone could see them. The notices had bold letters that said things like rule breaker and fix this now. They fluttered in the wind, making Jake's house look like it was in trouble. Neighbors walking by would slow down, read the notices, and whisper to each other. Some even shook their heads like Jake had done something really bad. Jake saw them staring, and it made his stomach feel a little funny. He didn't like being the new guy everyone was talking about. Karen didn't stop there. She started talking to other neighbors, getting them on her side. Every morning when Jake went out to grab his newspaper, he'd see a little group walking by, Karen and a few others like Mrs. Jenkins with her tiny dog and Mr. Carter with his coffee mug. Karen would point at Jake's gate and whisper, loud enough for him to hear, "He's hiding something with that lock. I bet it's no good." The neighbors would nod, their eyes sliding over to Jake. Some gave him mean looks like he was a stranger they couldn't trust. Others just looked away, but nobody said hi. Jake felt like he was in a movie where everyone was against him. But Jake didn't fight back. He didn't yell at Karen or argue with the neighbors. He didn't even tear down those yellow notices, though he really wanted to. Instead, he stayed quiet and watched. Jake was good at noticing things, like how a gadget worked or why a lock wasn't clicking right. And now he started noticing things about Karen, little things that didn't add up, things that made him wonder what she was really up to. For starters, Jake noticed Karen's car was gone a lot at night. Not just late, like when people go to a movie, but really late, like past midnight. He wasn't spying or anything. He just happened to be awake sometimes, fixing his lock or sipping hot cocoa on his porch. He'd see Karen's red car pull out of her driveway when the street was dark and quiet, the engine humming softly. Where was she going? Willow Creek was a small place. The stores closed early and there weren't any late-night parties around. Jake didn't know, but it seemed weird. Karen was always so bossy about rules, but she was sneaking off when nobody was watching. Another thing Jake noticed was how Karen acted when she heard sirens. One day he was outside watering his plants when a police car zoomed by, its siren wailing loud enough to make everyone look. Most neighbors just glanced up and went back to their business. But Karen, she froze. Her clipboard slipped a little in her hands and her face went pale like she'd seen a ghost. When the siren faded, she shook herself and hurried inside her house, slamming the door. Jake saw it all from his yard. That's not normal, he thought. Why would someone so tough act scared of a siren? It was like she was afraid the police were coming for her. Then came the strangest thing of all. One evening, Jake was out by his gate again, tweaking his electric lock. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The air was cool and the neighborhood was quiet, except for a dog barking a few houses down. Jake was focused, twisting a tiny screw to make his lock beep just right. That's when he glanced across the street and saw something odd at Karen's house. Her garage door was open, just a crack, not all the way, but enough for Jake to peek inside. And what he saw made his eyes go wide. Inside Karen's garage were boxes, not just a few like when you move or store Christmas decorations. There were tons of boxes, stacked high almost to the ceiling. They weren't plain cardboard either. They had weird labels on them with bright colors and words Jake couldn't read from so far away. Some looked like they came from stores with shiny logos. Others had tape that was peeling off like they'd been moved a lot. Jake wasn't the kind of guy to snoop, so he didn't creep over to look closer. But he couldn't shake the feeling that those boxes were important. Why did Karen have so many, and why were they hidden in her garage? Jake kept working on his lock, but his mind was racing. He remembered something else, too. Earlier that day, he'd been grabbing his mail when he overheard Karen talking on her phone. She was standing on her porch, packing back and forth, her voice low but sharp. "We need to keep things quiet," she'd said, glancing around like she was afraid someone was listening. "No mistakes, okay?" Jake hadn't thought much of it at the time. He figured she was just being her usual bossy self, maybe yelling at someone about HOA stuff. But now, after seeing those boxes, her words felt different, heavy, like she wasn't talking about rules or locks or anything normal. She was talking about a secret. Jake's gut told him Karen was up to something bigger than just picking on him. Those late-night car trips, her jumpy reaction to sirens, the mysterious boxes, it all added up to something strange. He didn't know what yet, but he felt it, like when you know a storm's coming even though the sky's still clear. Karen wasn't just mad about his lock. She was worried about something else, something she didn't want anyone to find out. And somehow, Jake's lock was making her nervous. He tightened the last screw on his lock and stepped back, watching it blink green. "You're not causing all this fuss, are you?" he said softly, patting the gate. He smiled, but it faded fast. Across the street, Karen's garage door was closed now like it had never been open. The neighborhood looked peaceful, with lights glowing in windows and kids riding bikes before dinner. But Jake knew better. Something was brewing in Willow Creek, and he was caught right in the middle of it. It was a bright, sunny afternoon, the kind where kids ride bikes and dogs chase balls in the yard. Everything seemed normal on Jake Street until Karen decided to cause big trouble. She stood on her perfect green lawn, her arms crossed, looking smug. Karen had called 911, telling them Jake's new electric lock was super suspicious and probably against the law. She thought she'd finally get Jake in trouble, maybe even kicked out of the neighborhood. Her nose was practically in the air as she waited for her big win. Sirens screamed down the road, loud and sharp, making everyone stop what they were doing. A shiny police car pulled right up to Jake's house, its red and blue lights flashing like a warning. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, whispering to each other. "What's going on?" one said. "Is Jake in trouble?" another asked. They all thought Jake was about to have a really bad day. Karen's lips curled into a mean little smile. She was sure she'd beaten him this time. After all, she was the boss of the neighborhood, or so she thought. Karen had been picking on Jake for weeks, ever since he put that fancy electric lock on his front door. She said it was ugly, that it didn't belong in her perfect neighborhood. She'd write angry notes, complain at meetings, and tell everyone Jake was trouble. Most people didn't argue with Karen. She was loud, bossy, and always waving her clipboard like it made her the queen. But Jake, he never fought back. He'd just nod or smile, which made Karen even madder. Today, though, she was sure she'd won. The police were here and Jake was done for, or so she thought. The cops stepped out of their car, their boots crunching on the gravel. One was tall with a serious face, the other shorter with a notepad in his hand. They walked up to Jake's front door, their hands resting near their belts. Karen watched from her lawn, practically bouncing with excitement. She couldn't wait to see Jake's face when they dragged him away. The neighbors held their breath, waiting for the big moment. Everyone thought they knew what was coming. Then Jake's door swung open. He stood there, calm as a sunny day, with a big grin on his face. "Hi, officers," he said like he was greeting old friends. "I've been waiting for you." The neighbors gasped. Karen's smile froze, then slipped a little. What was going on? Why wasn't Jake scared? The tall cop raised an eyebrow and the shorter one looked confused. Jake didn't seem like a guy in trouble. He seemed ready. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black flash drive, no bigger than a candy bar. Then he grabbed a thick stack of papers from a table by the door. "You guys might want to check this out," he said, handing them over. His voice was steady, like he was talking about the weather. The cops took the flash drive and papers, flipping through them. The tall one's eyes got wide and the shorter one started nodding slowly. Their faces turned super serious, like they'd just found something big. Karen's smirk was gone now. Her mouth hung open like a fish gasping for water. She took a step closer, trying to hear what was happening. "What's that?" she snapped, her voice shaky. "What's he giving you?" But the cops didn't answer her. They were too busy reading. The neighbors leaned out their windows, trying to figure it out. Nobody knew what Jake had done, but it was clear something huge was about to happen. Here's the thing, Jake wasn't just some guy who liked gadgets. He wasn't just the quiet new neighbor who fixed bikes and built birdhouses. Jake was a cybersecurity expert, a super smart guy who knew all about computers and catching bad guys online. For weeks, he'd been watching Karen, not because he was nosy, but because he'd noticed something fishy. Karen was always talking about her business deals, getting weird packages, and sneaking around at night. Jake's electric lock. It wasn't just a cool toy, it had a tiny hidden camera that recorded everything. And that camera had caught Karen doing some very bad things. See, Karen wasn't as perfect as she pretended. She'd been running a secret scam, tricking people online and taking their money. She used fake names to hide what she was doing, thinking nobody would ever catch her. She was sneaky, but Jake was sneakier. Every time she yelled about his lock or left a mean note, he was quietly collecting proof, videos, emails, even bank records. That flash drive he gave the cops, it was packed with evidence, like a treasure chest of Karen's secrets. The papers. They showed exactly how she'd been lying and cheating. The tall cop looked up from the papers, his face like stone. "This is serious," he said to his partner. The shorter cop plugged the flash drive into a little device they carried. A video popped up, clear as day, showing Karen sneaking around Jake's yard at night, looking nervous. Another clip showed her taking a package from a strange car. The neighbors couldn't see the screen, but they saw the cops' faces, and they knew something big was up. Karen's face turned red, then white. "That's not true," she yelled, stomping toward the cops. "He's lying, that's fake," but her voice cracked and nobody believed her. The tall cop turned to her, slow and steady. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk." He reached for his belt and pulled out a pair of shiny handcuffs. They clicked as he opened them, loud enough for everyone to hear. Karen's eyes got huge. She backed up, shaking her head. No, no, no," she stammered. "This is a mistake." But it wasn't a mistake. Jake had been one step ahead the whole time. He'd known Karen would try something big, like calling the cops. So he'd waited, patient as a cat, until she made her move. Now the cops had everything they needed to stop her. The neighbors stared, shocked. Karen, the lady who bossed everyone around, was in big trouble. And Jake, he just stood there, calm and quiet, watching it all unfold. The shorter cop started asking Karen questions, but she kept tripping over her words, making no sense. The tall one put a hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the police car. The handcuffs glinted in the sun as they clicked around her wrists. Karen looked around, desperate, hoping someone would help her. But the neighbors just watched, their mouths open. They trusted Karen, believed her when she said Jake was the problem. Now they saw the truth. Jake didn't cheer or laugh. He didn't need to. He'd already won. His lock, the one Karen hated so much, had helped catch her. His smarts, the ones she'd laughed at, had brought her down. The cops nodded at him like they respected him. "Thanks for this," the tall one said, holding up the flash drive. Jake just shrugged. "No problem," he said, like it was no big deal. But to everyone else, it was a huge deal. Karen's perfect world was falling apart right there in front of everyone. The queen of the neighborhood wasn't so powerful anymore. And Jake, he was the hero nobody expected. The street was quiet now, except for the sound of the police car door shutting. Karen's head hung low as the cops drove away. The neighbors didn't know what to say. They just looked at Jake, wondering who he really was. The neighborhood was super quiet as the police walked Karen to their shiny car. Her hands were in those silver handcuffs, and she looked smaller than ever. Jake stood on his porch, watching her try to wiggle out of trouble. "This is a huge mistake," she shouted, her voice loud and shaky. But nobody believed her anymore, not one person. The neighbors who used to nod along with her now whispered to each other, their eyes wide. "She fooled us," one said. "I can't believe it," said another. They felt silly for trusting Karen all this time. Karen kept talking, trying to explain herself, but the cops just shook their heads. They opened the car door and she had to sit in the back like someone who'd done something really bad. Jake didn't laugh or cheer. He didn't need to. He just watched, calm as ever, then turned and walked back to his garage. That's where he liked to be, fixing things, building stuff, and tinkering with his gadgets. To him, the fight was over, and he'd done what he needed to do. The police car drove away, its lights flashing red and blue. The neighbors stood on their lawns, still shocked. For so long, Karen had been the bossy lady who told everyone what to do. She'd walk around with her clipboard, acting like she owned the whole street. If your flowers weren't perfect or your mailbox was a tiny bit crooked, she'd write you a note or bang on your door. People listened to her because she was loud and pushy. But now they saw who she really was, a sneaky person who'd been lying and cheating behind their backs. A few days later, things started to change. The neighborhood group called the HOA had a big meeting. They needed to pick a new leader since Karen was gone. Her name didn't even come up, not once. Nobody wanted to talk about her anymore. It was like she'd never been in charge. Some people thought Jake should be the new leader. After all, he figured out Karen's secrets and helped get rid of her tricks, but Jake wasn't interested. "I'm good," he said with a smile when someone asked him to run. He didn't care about being the boss. He just wanted to live his life and keep his cool lock on his door. That electric lock, the one Karen hated so much, stayed right where it was. It gleamed in the sunlight, shiny and proud like a trophy. Jake didn't brag about it, but everyone knew it was special. That lock had a tiny camera that caught Karen doing bad things, and it helped Jake show the truth. Now when neighbors walked by his house, they didn't roll their eyes or whisper mean things. Instead, they waved. "Hey Jake," they call. Some even stopped to chat. "Thanks for what you did," one lady said. "You made our street better," said a man with a dog. Jake would just nod and say, "No big deal." But to them, it was a big deal. The street felt different now. People weren't scared of getting yelled at for silly stuff like having a messy yard or a funny-colored fence. They started talking to each other more, sharing cookies or inviting kids to play. It was like Karen's mean rules had kept everyone apart, and now they could be friends again. One day, a group of neighbors even threw a little party in the park. They laughed and ate hot dogs, and someone put up a sign that said, "No clipboards allowed." Everyone thought that was hilarious. Jake didn't go to the party. He was busy in his garage as usual. But someone brought him a plate of food, and he smiled when he saw it. He wasn't the kind of guy who needed a big thank you. He was happy just knowing the neighborhood was better now. Karen's tricks were gone, and nobody had to deal with her bossy ways anymore. The truth had come out, and it felt like a heavy weight had lifted off everyone's shoulders. As time went on, people forgot about Karen. They didn't talk about her mean notes or her loud voice. Instead, they talked about Jake, quiet Jake, who turned out to be a hero. His lock stayed shiny, a reminder that sometimes the quietest person has the biggest surprises. In the neighborhood, it was happier than ever, all because one guy wasn't afraid to stand up for what was right. Wow, what a wild story, right? Let's take a moment to think about what happened. Jake's adventure teaches us something big. Sometimes the quiet kid, the one who doesn't talk a lot or show off, is the one who notices everything. Jake didn't yell or fight when Karen was mean. He just watched, waited, and used his smarts to show the truth. And Karen, she thought she was the boss of everyone, like nobody could stop her. But guess what? People who act like they're perfect often mess up the most. When they do, they fall hard, just like Karen did. This story makes me think about how we treat people. Karen was bossy and mean because she thought Jake wasn't important. She judged him by how he looked, quiet, with his gadgets and that shiny lock. But she was so wrong. Jake was super smart and brave. He didn't need to be loud to be strong. That's a cool lesson for all of us. Next time someone tries to push you around or make you feel small, don't get mad or give up. Stay calm like Jake. Keep your eyes open. Watch and listen. The truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, it can change everything. You know what else is awesome? Jake didn't do this to be a big hero or to make everyone like him. He just wanted things to be fair. That's what makes him special. We can all be a little like Jake. If you see something wrong, like someone being unfair or mean, you don't have